Well, Chris, I'm gonna take you back 20, I don't know, 22 years, 23 years. You and I were sitting in our shared office, trying to figure out. I think combined we were making $15,000 a year.
Oh, we weren't making that much.
Is that a stretch? So we were hired. Just to give everyone listening a little background, we were hired the same time. You were the head women's coach and I was the head men's coach at Maryville. And I think they thought they were doing a service to us by giving us $6,000 or $7,000 for the entire season to run a college basketball program. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right.
And I remember you and I having the conversation about at some point we were going to write a book about Division III college coaching, and we were going to have chapter 3 be title was going to be recruiting, and then we were going to have just blank pages throughout the whole chapter. Does that sound about right to you?
It does, because recruiting in Division III is definitely an art form. It's not a science.
So you were world-class high school coach for a long time. Then you jumped with me to the college level. We had a great 9 years together. We'll talk about that here as we go. Then you're back into coaching high school. How's that transition been for you? Is there a level you have found over the years that you like better, that you've enjoyed?
Well, I mean, it depends on the program, Matt. The last, my first, 24 years, I was in basically two places. I was at Parkway South,
right,
and I was at Maryville. The last 7 years, I've been in 6 places. So it depends on the kids you have.
Yeah,
more level to me, and their level of commitment and loving the game. That to me is the most important thing. It beats where you are. It beats what level you're at. It really is all about the players, and I think I found a place where the kids really love the game. Thankfully, one of your former players, Matt Baker, is instilled a really good culture here. And the girls, they come in at 6 a.m. shoot. They don't have to, and that's the kind of kids I want to be around.
Yeah,
the people that love the game the same as me. But given a choice, I would rather do college only because there's not the teaching aspect involved. But for old guys like me, there's not a lot of college openings. So, you got to take what you can get.
Yeah, I don't think people understand these days, if you want a college job, if there's a college job opening, if there's less than 200 or 250 applicants, it's rare.
Right. Because everybody wants to do it because they think it's easy. And,
right.
It's a lot easier than teaching. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that when the 6 years I was able to do it full time were the 6 best years of my life, because I got my life back, and I was able to dictate my own schedule. So I really missed that aspect of it. But, it's, you make the big time where you are. And right now the big time is Westphalia, Missouri. So.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, anybody that has a chance to coach at the college level, if they can have half the success that you have, and half of the results and the impact that you had, it would have been a great career. But you did it for a long time. You did it really well.
I
And it was,
appreciate it. I had great assistant coaches. I had, Matt Wickenhauser. I had Steve Cochran.
yep,
Got his soul. I had Jacob Jorg,
yep,
who's making his own trail right now. So just a ton of great assistants. Randy Keys. I mean,
yeah,
Brian Frazier at Festus. It's really about the help you got.
yep,
And Lori Drury at Christian. So, as your assistants can make or break you. And now kind of an assistant's role myself. Before I do anything, I'm like, well, how would I want my assistant to react?
right, exactly.
And try to coach that way. So.
Yeah. As you know, I did write the book on college recruiting, and so I want to dabble into college recruiting a little bit in this conversation. When you were recruiting at the college level, and there's going to be a lot of families that are going to be listening to it, families that have played and coached with you, and you've taught over the years, and families that work with me, and I want them to have an idea of how a college coach thinks about recruiting. For you, what was your approach? What was your philosophy when you attacked a recruiting cycle? What were you looking at the seniors that were walking out the door? Were you looking at the big picture? Were you looking 4 years in advance? How did you
Well,
approach recruiting?
if you're talking about the first time we came to Maryville, don't forget I only had 3 players.
Yeah, I had 4 and you had 3.
Yeah,
right.
so three players and 2 used basketballs later. That made a big difference in how we were going to recruit our kids.
Right.
What ended up happening is that if they had a working pulse, we were recruiting. So it was pretty much that simple. They didn't have to be any good. All they had to do was be able to put smoke on a mirror, and you wanted to come and you wanted to pay $30,000 a year. Well, okay, guess what? We'll take you.
Right.
So when I first started college coaching, that's and we laughed about that because it was funny. I mean, we had nothing and more of nothing. Hi, ladies. And of course, as we started to win, that changed. I mean, when you're winning, you get the kids that you want, and fortunately, those kids for us were really good. So that changed how we were going to recruit and who we were looking at, because more good players wanted to come to our place.
Absolutely. And when you were winning at the level you guys were winning, kids were lining up to talk and come visit. When you have the option, though, as a college coach, you get to choose who you bring into your program. So even when you have kids lining up to talk to you, that doesn't mean you're going to take them. What were some of the specific things that you were looking for, if there were 2 or 3 things that you wanted in a prospect, and maybe talk about talent a little bit on the basketball side, and then talk a little bit about character and things like that as well?
Well, in Maryville, they had to have good grades or they couldn't afford it.
Right.
That was part, you built that package. You and Larry Hayes built that package, where if they had a, ACT, we were able to, hey, do an XY chart. Hey, if you're getting a 22, you're going to get 10. If you got a 24, you're going to get 12. I forget what the numbers were.
Right.
But, it took a good 1/3 off their tuition, which made it almost, and I want to underline, almost state school affordable.
Right.
Which was our big sales pitch. I mean, let's face it, even in before the economic bust, 2008, money was a big factor. And even some of our more prominent families who had good businesses, it's a big chunk of change for college. When they could go to a state school for much less, they wouldn't play probably. But, our selling point was, hey, you'll get to play, you'll pay state school money, we'll give you a great collegiate experience, and give us a chance. And fortunately, we guessed right on a lot of those kids, and they fit our system really, really well. And a couple kids fell in our laps. Kerry Snyder fell in our lap, but we did. After our second year, Matt Wickenhauser came up to me and he said, how are we going to do this? I mean, and I laughed at him. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, well, are we going to win or not? I'm like, well, I'd like to win. He goes, well, then we need to change what we're doing. And he went out and he beat the bushes, and we got some great kids that year. I mean, that summer of 2003, 2004 really was a windfall year for us. And And it really didn't matter what position they were, or where they were from. If they wanted to play basketball and they came on good recommendations from their coaches and wanted to come to Maryville, well, they were in. So
Yeah, we both brought in probably as great of a group of kids as we could have in those first couple of recruiting classes.
100%.
Because
yeah.
we brought in kids of character. We brought in kids that were committed to not only being great basketball players, but I thought they were really committed to having a great college experience. I mean, those kids became the center, the soul of that university. Don't you agree? Don't you think?
Oh yeah. They were the heartbeat of the school, because those kids were now staying. They weren't going home on weekends.
Right.
They were from out of town, so to speak. And fortunately for us, both teams, the chemistry was really good among the players, and they did a lot of stuff together on the weekends. So they had a social life, and we were able to travel together.
Yeah.
I remember the hellish trip to Hawaii when my year-old cried the entire time. I still feel bad about that, and I remind Zoe of that every time I get a chance, because she's now, if you can believe it, 22, Matt.
That's amazing.
And so yeah,
amazing. I remember Zoe having her in her pumpkin seat, as a newborn, in our office that we shared. So it's amazing to me that she's going to be a college graduate, and your youngest is in college. Amazing. When if I put you in a room full of 300 parents that have 15, 16-year-olds, and they said, Coach Ellis, what does our kid need to be looking like, skill set, character? What does a kid need to look like if you're going to recruit them, and college coaches are going to give them reality, a realistic look? What would you say to them?
Matt, and you did this too, but the transition to Division II really changed how we needed to recruit. I mean, when we even with our really good Division III team, we got on a bus with a group of Division II girls in one of those tournaments that we played, and I think it was in Arizona. I think it was in Phoenix, and we shared buses to and from the facility, and the shoulders of those players on Division II were just so much wider than our kids. They were in the weight room. They were just athletically superior human beings. So depending on the physique of a kid and the type of competition that they're used to, I would be able to steer that parent in a certain direction. Now, if I'm coaching Division III, hey, you've got good grades, you've got a little high school resume, you want to play, you can go just about anywhere. You can walk on. If you have the desire to play, listen and improve, you're willing to put the hours in for no money, because you're not going to get any. Look for a great academic fit and join the team and roll your dice, because you don't lose anything one way or another with how good of a player you are. I mean, as long as you're a good person, I mean, they're not going to throw you off the team, and you're probably going to be accepted. Yeah. Now in Division II, it becomes a little bit more complicated. Yeah. You want to be seen by a Division II coach, you're going to have to be on a club circuit. I would think you're going to have to be pretty fundamentally sound. You can have a couple of holes in your game, whether they be fundamental or physical, but for the most part, it's going to be club ball, and that's going to be where it's at. I need to see you play club, or you got to send me some great high school tape, and your high school coach has to have a great recommendation, or probably I'm going to take the kid who I do know has played in a competitive club and has a lot of success. Now, there's other factors, of course, grades, personality or whatnot, but our whole the way we attacked it changed with Division II, because we had the resources now to spend the money.
Right.
And we had to, and a lot of Division II coaches, the old school coaches, they bristle at this, but we left some money in our pockets for that transfer.
Yeah.
And now, Matt,
that's common.
Right. I'm not in obviously in the game anymore from a recruiting standpoint, but the big thing now is that college coaches, number one is keeping their own kids. They got to recruit their own kids. Number two is transfers and portals. They're looking at those. And then number three is JUCO in a lot of cases. because college coaches want that experience. Why take an 18-year-old when you can have a 21-year-old?
Exactly.
Because they need to win right away. And then 4 is the freshman. And it's killed kids like my son because, he's 19, he's a freshman, he redshirted, he got in one game, did fine, but he could conceivably redshirt again. Some of those guys are 24, 25 years old, and they're still playing.
Right.
They get COVID, they get a year of ineligibility, they get hurt, whatever. These guys are, in their mid-20s, and they're still playing.
Right.
Now, basketball and football is not the same sport. I'm not equating it to that. But can you imagine being 24 years old and going up against an 18-year-old? What a big advantage. Those guys are grown men, and they're grown women, and there is a big difference. My son, he's a little bit discouraged. I said, well, do you think there's a 12-year-old that can stay with you? I mean, we're talking about the same difference, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You got to be patient. You got to wait this thing out. And like I said, hey, you're on scholarship. Smile, nod, and shut up.
I've probably told this 100 times. I felt like I finally became a real basketball player when I was about 24 years old. My eligibility was gone. I was out of college, and it started to click, and I understood how to play the game. But it took 4 years of college and 2 years of rec ball playing against older guys. And all of a sudden I realized how to play. So it's a huge advantage.
Don't you wish you could play now that you've coached?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the sad part about it is we can't.
That's right. I can barely put the high top. I can barely get the high tops on. I can't bend over anymore.
Tell me about it. Yeah. Yeah.
One more basketball question. I'm going to dig into this a little bit more with you because to me, I want to see how your brain works. If you had to start a program tomorrow from scratch, would you start with size? Would you start with shooting, or would you start with ball handling? Where would you begin?
What level are we at?
Well, let's go with D2 since we started there. We jumped.
Okay. Well, I would try to recruit a certain kid at every position. So if I'm looking at a point guard, I want a fundamentally sound point guard that can run the offense, handle the basketball. 2, I want a pure shooter. 3, I want an athletic kid who can dribble and shoot, kind of do it all kid. 4, I want a rugged rebounder, maybe a stretch 4 that can shoot threes.
Right.
And I don't think a true 5 is as important as they used to be.
Right.
Because everybody wants to be a guard. And so I think the big thing is that now just another big kid that can play, not necessarily a post player, because everybody's donut offense now. I mean,
right.
Isn't it amazing how offenses have changed? Let's face it, the flex was the offense of the 80s. Loyola Marymount, the 90s. Bob Knight's motion offense in the 80s. And then, now we turn around and now, people are running, oh gosh, they call it motion offense, but it's really not the Bobby Knight motion.
No,
but you got
nowhere close.
Everybody's playing 5 out. So
right.
It's Coach Howard. Good to see you. It's just amazing how it emulates whoever the best team is. In the 70s, everybody wanted John Wooden's 2-2-1 press.
Right.
Everybody's box pressing and playing. Are you still there?
We had a little technical difficulty, but we're back with Coach Chris Ellis. So for you, it's really about balance. But if there's one thing you can't live without, is it size? Is it shooting? Is it ball handling? What do you feel like is what makes the engine go in your?
I think Matt, the way you and I both like to play, I have to say speed.
Yeah.
Just speed, because you can't really coach it. You can work on quickness, but you can't really work on speed. And when you're fast, you can do a lot of different things.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be the big thing. And of course, if you're playing against teams that are massive, the strength factor too. The size and speed would help a lot.
Yeah. Since you and I both kind of built programs from scratch, what advice would you give to a young high school or college coach that's taken over a program What advice would you give them to really focus on in that first year?
Be yourself. Absorb all the information you can, but know that you can't use every great idea. Be a student of the game. I still love learning about the game. I go to the NBCA clinic every year, one or two things that we can use. I love the fact that I have, there's a way I'd like to play, but when I had different kids, I think we adapted. I learned from Kevin Carroll, who succeeded you, the Princeton offense. So we had a great center and a great point guard, and we ran it. And we got to the GLVC championship. We didn't win it, but we got there, and we won our division with that offense. But that was the only year we used it,
Right.
So, and I couldn't have done that if I didn't learn it. And if I had been stuck in an offensive system, we would not have won. So I appreciate the fact that learning matters, and always learn and have a system, but be adaptable because it's going to change.
Right.
And if you're lucky enough to have a 4-year run, but you want to continue coaching, that 4-year run's going to end, and you're going to have some new kids, and you're going to need to know some different stuff, because those kids probably won't be able to run your stuff the way the other kids did. So then it becomes their stuff. So the biggest thing is to be adaptable and keep learning.
Well, you were always so much better at this than I was. You would take a system and you would really make it your own, and you would stick to it. My scatterbrain, I'm like you. I love to learn, but man, I would learn so many things, and I'd want to try 8 different things in a season. And as I got older, I learned, all right, I've got to focus my energies on things. Is that easy for you? Is that hard for you?
As I've gotten older, it's become easier because, again, like last year at Whitfield, we only had 5 kids,
Right.
and what do you do with that? Right.
Right.
So we couldn't play man-to-man, which killed me because I hate the 4-letter Z word. I hate it.
Me too.
But I brought in a guy that was another great assistant coach, Santana Barnes. He was a zone guy. He got them to play a tenacious 2-3 zone, basically with 5 kids, and one of them who'd never played basketball before.
Right.
And we were holding people in the 30s, So again, another system adaptation with kids. And because I had that, we were still able to adapt and adjust and succeed.
Right.
So change. Adapt, grow, change.
Yeah. And for me, that's what keeps me young. That's what keeps it fresh.
Well, yeah, it'll keep you young.
So what I love too, I don't know about you, but I get caught up on Instagram. They show the European clips of offense. And I tell you what the coaches in Europe are doing with offense and how they see the game and how they see motion and space, it's amazing to me.
Well, they're making use of the shooters. They're going back to fundamentals, ball handling, screening, cutting, shooting, and getting baskets, because that stuff's hard to guard.
It is.
If they do it well, every offense is designed to score baskets. It just depends on how well you're going to run it, and how much better the defense is going to be able to handle it. Some defenses won't handle it, some will. And then can you adapt to the changing defense?
Right.
Do you have something up your sleeve? If play number 1 doesn't work, do you have a counter? Right. Which when they do this, we'll do that. And it becomes a chess game, and that's what makes it fun.
Well, it's so funny. I listened to a former NBA player. He played in the NBA for 10, 12 years, and now he's over in Europe. And they asked him what the difference was. And he goes, well, in Europe, it's a lot harder basketball. And they go, really? It's harder? And he goes, yeah, in the NBA, it's almost all one-on-one. So when you're not guarding the ball, you can rest. You can almost relax. You can be in a defensive position and
just got to block out. Yeah.
In Europe, he goes, it's 5 guys always moving. You're constantly chasing. You're constantly going through screens. You're constantly getting hit. And he goes, it's just, the NBA is a much more athletic game, but the level of basketball that's being played in Europe is such a higher level of 5-man, 5-woman ball that
Mhm.
it's not in the same game.
Right. Right. I mean, let's face it, everybody's kind of defaulted to the high ball screen or the horn set,
Right.
Because it it can take the game out of your hands as a coach. I mean, Susie runs off of Joni's ball screen, and let's just see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
And if they pick up, let's have Katie over in the corner. We'll throw it to her, and she'll get a shot. Right.
That's right.
If they jam and double team you, and you can't pull back, crossover dribble, and get the ball in the high post, well, guess what? You just turned it over. So.
Right.
But it's pretty simple, and it can be hard to guard.
Yeah,
it can be hard to guard. And I've always, we don't set a lot of ball screens in Fatima, but I've always said, when I was doing clinics and whatnot, I'd tell the coaches, if you don't set ball screens, I want to play you.
That's right.
Because I always had trouble.
I tell you
deciding
what,
how to play that damn ball screen.
Especially if you're setting screens in transition, if you're setting ball screens in any kind of transition. When it's not inside the arc and below that 30-foot line, man, oh man.
Well, that's why Gonzaga's had so much success.
Yeah.
I mean, they set that wing ball screen, and I can't believe people aren't icing it and forcing it to go back the other way.
I know.
The thing is, when they do that, Gonzaga's posts, they lock and trail, and they kick out the European three, and those guys knock it down.
Yeah.
So,
you can get away with that when you have 6-7 guards too.
That's true. When they're all guards and they're all posts, it makes them harder to guard.
Yeah.
They can do a lot of different things.
That's a really good transition. I've coached boys and men for 20 some years, and then I had the pleasure of coaching women for 3 years, and I realized really late into those 3 years how different of a sport it is.
Yes.
And I always appreciated how you coached your team and what you were able to get out of them, and how hard they worked for you. And I never felt like you had to cattle prod them. Where boys, I mean, I felt like I had to constantly be stepping on them to keep them moving.
Matt, 2 years ago, I coached boys at Key West, and it was a disaster. I mean, they weren't buying in, and we weren't very good to begin with. They weren't buying in, and we just got annihilated. I mean, I played Ray Allen. He was coaching a private school in Miami. His son was on the team, and I said, Ray, I just got a question, and I got a request, and he said, okay, coach, go ahead. I said, who was the best player you ever played against? And I asked him that because I knew he played against LeBron and Mike.
Right.
And he didn't bat an eye, Jordan.
Right.
He said, Jordan. I said, good. And he goes, well, okay, what's your request? I said, coach, you can press us and the game will be over in less than a half, but it's your senior night. And I know you want it to last as long as possible. I said, so if you do that, play man to man, you'll still win by 29-30. The clock will not run till late and you'll have a full game. He goes, coach, I got you. They beat us by 29.
That is a typical Chris Ellis question to start a game. I love it.
And request. Yes.
What do you feel like now that you've coached both, you coach women for 25, 30 years, what do you see as the biggest difference between the two games?
Well, I think it's the difference between the sexes. Okay. I mean, and being male, I get it. I've coached my son's teams. We had some success with them, Little League through the Marquette system, whatnot. We had really good kids. But the biggest difference is women have to be fundamentally better. And because they have to be fundamentally better, they're more cooperative. They're more cooperative with each other. They're more cooperative within a system. They're much more apt to take suggestions to change. They listen more. I don't know, because they have to or because they just are better listeners. Whereas guys, I still think, and it's easier to win. It's easier to win on a women's level because I think you can win with less talent more often, if that makes sense, than you can with guys. I think with guys, if they're physically superior, no matter how good a coach you are, how prepared your team is. It's really tough to win when the other team's just physically better than you. It's hard to win in women too, but there are days where you can play teams that are much more talented, even if you have those things in play.
Right. I agree.
I've always said, coaching women is a Dickens novel. It's the best of times and it's the worst of times. And when it's the best of times, there's nothing better.
Right.
There's nothing better. When they like each other and they play for each other, it is the coolest thing. And I had probably half a dozen teams at Maryville that were like that. Our team at Fatima is very similar to that, so we're really lucky in that realm here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Your teams were so fun to watch, but they just did everything fundamentally the right way. How they passed the ball, how they finished on a layup, how they set a screen.
And we spent a lot of time on that stuff.
Yes.
Half hour, 45 minutes every practice devoted to those very things.
Yes.
5 offensive moves to the basket, post moves, screening, buddy screening, the 5 screens, the 5 cuts. I mean, we spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
And we scrimmaged too, though. We got a lot of scrimmaging in. You don't have to, if you do the Hubie Brown practice.
Hold on, Chris. I lost you. Second. Go.
If you do the Hubie Brown's, practice outline, you still have 45 minutes left over for scrimmaging, and you've encompassed every aspect of the game. And I've subscribed to that more often than not. And I don't write up the practice now being the assistant coach, but Matt does it similarly. And just got to make wise use of your time. You get everything you need to get done in 2 hours, no problem. Just make use of your time.
Yeah.
And I think basketball can be overcoached at times, but never undertaught.
Right.
And a lot of these AAU guys, they just want to roll the ball up there and get hardware and get on to the next level. Well, that's not me. And I like getting hardware, but it's not, I think I'm a teacher of the game first.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's why you and I clicked so quickly and had so much fun for 9 years, because we both had that same mentality. We were teachers before everything else. We knew if we taught the game the right way, eventually we were going to get the hardware. The winning, the championships were going to take care of themselves, and they did.
And we know with girls, there's an emotional aspect. They got to know you're on their side.
Right.
And that you care about them, and you ask how their dog is, and just the things that they're thinking about, that you're thinking about as well, really helps. Just a little bit of rapport before practice. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there can go a long way with girls. Boys, I don't think it matters. I think they're more apt to say whatever and move on. So
yeah, with boys. I think the analogy I use is they're all fighting to see who's going to be Superman, who's going to lead the Justice League.
Right.
We're girls, they know they can win the battle if they're all Robin. They don't all have to be Batman. They can be Robin, and the team's going to do really well. They buy into that a lot faster than boys do.
Yeah, boys are a lot about ego. And, I don't want to knock the boys game, but, we're boys and we can say it. I mean, you're right about the Justice League thing. You're right.
And that's what I loved about coaching the women for 3 years is I just appreciated their desire to just get better. It was the pack was greater than the wolf before I walked into the gym.
Yeah. Not 90 girls out of 100 want to please the coach.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't want the coach mad, upset at them, so.
And, I coached men for so long where it was all about pushing buttons. Whose button did I need to push today to get them to the next level? With girls, you try to push their buttons and they just go the opposite way.
Bad strategy. Yeah. I mean, you on them once or twice a year. And the thing with girls is that I think, for those girls coaches that are out there, is don't get upset. Just bring them to half court. Say, you got 5 minutes to fix whatever's going on here.
Right.
If I don't see anything happen in 5 minutes, we're going to have to do something else. And then in that 5 minutes, if it doesn't change for the better, you bring them together and say, okay, girls, can I have all the basketballs, please? And you put them on the rack and you walk away and you lock them up. And they look at each other like, what? And the next day they almost invariably come out and they play a million times better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And you get mad. You don't have a headache. You didn't say anything you're going to regret. And it's beautiful. And I've done that rather than, destroy the ball rack, which I might have done in my younger days. I can't remember exactly, but just put the balls on the rack, lock them in the closet. And guess what? You got a great practice the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. You were really, really good at that. And it's amazing what happens when the kids have to make a decision together, and how quickly they'll make that decision if they know there's no other option. There's no balls, or we do it the right way and we get the balls.
It's fun watching them look at each other when they have no basketballs. You got a little porthole into the gym, and they're looking at like, what just happened?
Right.
He took our toys.
All right, I'm going to step in. I'm going to step into the deep end with you just for a little bit. What you've been a parent, you've raised two athletes, you've raised two kids that have done really well, and you've been a coach of kids for 30 years, and so you've been on both sides of it. You were an athlete yourself. You were a college player. Now that you look back, what do you wish your parents would have known when you were 16, 17 years old? And your parents were great. I loved your parents. Loved your dad.
Yeah, they were great. My dad really encouraged. He never played a sport in his life. My mom was the athlete in the family. She played some high school basketball. In fact, she was in high school with a gym teacher by the name of Red Auerbach.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yep. I didn't know it either until I did some family digging. And yes, sir.
Red Auerbach was her
Roosevelt High School in the 1940s. You can look that baby up.
What high school was it?
Roosevelt in Northwest Washington, D.C.
No kidding.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But
you never had that conversation with her?
No. I opened up her yearbook and there he was. Right there.
Her son was a high school and college coach, and she never thought to mention that Red Auerbach was her PE teacher?
Nope, never did.
That's amazing.
And she knew who he was. I mean, my dad was a big Celtics fan.
Right.
He's from Boston. And yeah, she knew. She never said anything. Yeah. I had to read about it, and I called her out and I'm like, oh yeah, he was there. They just didn't have the plethora of background in basketball that they do now. We didn't have social. We had 3 channels growing up, Matt. We had NBC.
Right, that's it. That's all we had.
We had 11 and 9. And you could get 30 if you had aluminum foil wrapped around your rabbit ears.
Right.
We had to get up and change the channel. That was our big exercise.
That's right.
So and there was one NBA game a week on. College games only came on at tournament time.
That's right.
And they just didn't know. I mean, if you were lucky like I was and got on a Parkway Association team growing up, your buddies played, and the ABA was in St. Louis for a couple of years.
Right.
The Hawks left by the time I was old enough to know what they were. So they did what they could do. But now parents are, they're clued into the social media. They know all the stuff. They all played not so long ago. Here at Fatima, our softball state championship team this year, 2023, 8 of the players had mothers on the 96 state championship.
You're kidding me.
No. 8.
That's how I grew up. That's small town. Yeah.
And that is so cool. That is so cool. But regardless, small town or big city, with the AAU stuff going on now, parenting your kid, navigating that is really, really hard. Drew played the summer softball or baseball circuit, competitively. And one day we're in the batting cage Christmas Eve. He's 12 years old. He looks at me and goes, "Dad, this is crazy." And I went, "You know what? You're right." And we never went to club ball in any sport ever again.
That's great.
And
that recognition doesn't happen very often. Right.
And thank God for football, because that was all school controlled, because clubs don't really exist in football. It's too expensive. Right. And, that's what he did. And he
That's
ended up
great.
going that route. He played basketball 2 years, but he went the football route. So
That's great. Well, Coach, anytime I got a chance to talk hoops and coaching with you, it makes my day. And I wish we could go all day. I know you got a game tonight, and I've got a practice tonight, but it was a pleasure. I miss you.
it's a lot of fun, boss.
We had, I've been coaching. This is year 27 for me,
Oh,
and
that's nothing.
I know it. And the 9 we had together is about as fun as it can
Epic.
be. And I'll tell anybody that's really it's basketball's, I think it's the only sport. There's men's and women's tennis, there's men's and women's soccer, but for me, I think basketball is the only one where you kind of share everything,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and when you find a partner like we had in each other, it makes it 1,000 times better.
It was just it was great. And a lot of coaches, particularly coaches of men at the college level, don't really care for the women's coaches too much, or vice versa. And we really did have great chemistry, and it was fun.
Yeah.
And we laughed a lot, and that, I think that helped.
It does. It's better. It beats crying.
Right. You're right. We didn't take ourselves too seriously, because I was part-time until your very last year there.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really know if I was going to stick with it or not.
Right.
What was going to happen after that first year, and I was even up in the air as early as spring. Not knowing if I was going to quit or stay with it. And they made it worth my while at the time. So I did.
They got lucky. They had somebody that had a teacher pension in you, and they had somebody that was too dumb to go find a better job in me. That we were suckers to make $6,000-7,000 a year until we were able to make some changes. But it was joy. Yeah, I've got a partner in crime now at Devlin High School, and Chris Olson. He's a lot like you in terms of the relationship he has with the girls, and they play hard, but they play smart, and they play together, and it's really rare when you get that. And I knew how much I grew as a coach because I had you every day, and I know how much fun it was that our kids cared about each other and respected each other. And
a lot of them married each other.
A lot of them married each other, and some of them went on to have 9-10 kids together. And
oh my God, that is unbelievable. What are they doing? I even said, Matt, I'm like, what are you doing?
They're the happiest. They're the happiest people in the world.
And Leah looks the same as she did in college.
Oh my gosh, they both do. They both look like they.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
If my wife and I had 9 kids, they'd have to scrape us off the ceiling.
Well, there's no way anybody would do that.
I love it.
At Fatima, we have some extended families from years ago,
right?
But they were farming families,
right.
And they did it for that reason, for the most part,
right?
I saw that. I just laugh every time I see a Facebook of them. You realize they had a team and a half or 2 teams of my Whitfield team last year?
That's great. That's great. I love them. I'm so proud of them too. They just their kids amazing. Are so happy, and
that's amazing.
Yeah, those are the things you get to our age. You start realizing what you've done and what you've been through, and you look at the family tree that both of us have in terms of our kids and what our players have become, and it's a really great feeling. It's the reason I keep wanting to do it.
You never know when it's going to come back. Look at the present company. Really,
Yeah.
I am living with one of your former players and loving it in literally middle of Missouri, the middle of Missouri.
Well, give Matthew Baker a big hug for me. Tell him I love him, and I hope you guys get a W tonight.
All right, man. Thanks, Matt. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Coach. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.